Welcome to Culmination, where everything comes together. In the process of becoming our best self, I have with me the prospective law student, Sawyer Paugh, to discuss the topic of delayed gratification. And with that said, let's get started. So, Sawyer, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so how would you define delayed gratification?
I would say that my main definition for delayed gratification would be the suffering of the present for the pleasures of the future. So it's, to put it in terms of gratification, it would be the idea of not having gratification now or not having satisfaction now in order to receive future gratification or satisfaction. Yes.
Yeah, so that makes me think of like an investment of some sense. Would you say so?
Yeah, it's kind of like think of like a Roth IRA. So you put money into it over time, and you're not using that money now to, say, buy a car or buy fancy food or whatever it may be. But in the future, you're going to have a very large retirement fund. So you may not have that pleasure of food or whatever it may be now, but you'll be able to live luxuriously and voluptuously as when you're older.
That's a good vocab word. Well, yes, yeah. I see what you're saying because there's something to be said with this topic overall, which is kind of why we decided to go about it, where it's like, obviously you're making a conscious decision to not receive that gratification in the present for yourself to have it in the future, but usually that future benefit outweighs anything in the present.
Usually. So I would say in most cases, from what I've experienced and from what I can think of, it does work. There are certain catches to this, and I think there are certain cases to where if you need to eat, then you should eat. There's a certain limit to, of course, extremes, and if you're not eating and you're saving all your money to be able to eat in the future, it doesn't make sense.
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah, so if there's also the concept of, and this is also very interesting, is in economics there's a concept of money is worth more now. So there's a devaluation of money as time goes on. That's why when you invest, you're investing for annuity and a accumulation of funds to combat inflation. So some people may argue in the modern day or in the present moment, what you should do is buy your groceries now before inflation hits. You know, as we're seeing, if we see high inflation, then what you can do is you can stock up on supplies, stock up on inventory before it gets exceedingly expensive, to where not only does your current value increase in that inventory, but you can also ensure kind of a future benefit and a present benefit from spending money now instead of putting it away in either a savings account or something that doesn't battle interest, but in fact deflates itself.
You know what that kind of reminds me of? So are you familiar with those like Nintendo figures called Amiibo?
Yes.
Yeah, so for those unaware, they're like these little figurines of Nintendo characters that were sold to like promote games like Super Smash Brothers for the Wii U and now the Switch. And you basically scan the figures into your controller to give you extra content in your game. So the thing that happened was when they were released in I think like 2016 or something.
Yeah.
It's like you have these really nice figures. Like I don't think Nintendo's ever released figures, like official figures like that were just as good of quality. I mean, they're just plastic, but they look really cool. They look really nice. And they sold them, but they produced such a limited quality of them. So what happened was all these buyers on eBay would like hoard all these Amiibo and would sell them for super high prices when nobody would be able to buy them at your regular Target or GameStop. So that just kind of goes along. That's what your talking point reminded me of, because it's like the amiibo were just $12 when you could buy them on the stores, but these people anticipated that, well, Nintendo's only producing a small amount, so if I buy these now, yes, it's $12, but I'll be able to get filthy rich off of this.
Yeah, I think there's a point to be made that there's a trade. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a multi-layered concept of delayed gratification where, and this also is in economics with opportunity costs, with the idea of if you choose one option or one decision, then the opportunity cost is the potential of the decision you did not choose to commit to. So
The
if you
road not
have
taken.
exactly the road not taken,
Yes.
and with your example of amiibos, what you're going to have is you could spend that money on something else. You could.
Mm-hmm.
You could put it into a savings account, or you could put it into whatever it may be. But
Yes.
in doing in choosing to buy this product that is going to have more future value because of its limited supply,
Mm-hmm.
you are, in a sense, putting money that you could use for something else now into something that's going to be worth more in the future. So
Right.
you are sacrificing perhaps a different level of delayed gratification for your current level of delayed gratification.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, as you said, it's multi-layered. You have to also consider that it's not just a financial level of gratification here. Um, this might be a bit complicated, but there's also like a moral thing going on there, because these people who did this practice were like very disrespected. Like, people hated these guys because, I mean, you think about it, the reason why you can't buy like a Link or Kirby or Mario amiibo, like just a basic Nintendo character in your local GameStop, is because some guy went ahead and bought all of the shelves full of them so they could sell it for a ton of money. Now, yes, it sounds like a good principle of delayed gratification for them, but now their reputation's a lot worse, because now people look at the people like that who sell these items that should have been just $12 for like $200. Like, there's a whole reputation thing to consider there. Um, just like the moral idea behind it. I mean, like, who's the demographic for amiibos? I mean, sure, you've got your kids and stuff. No, I mean, yeah, they would be your target audience, you know? Like, they're the ones playing Smash Brothers who just want a cool figurine, but also you have like the 30-year-olds who like are still playing video games who are probably enjoying these figures more.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, it kind of screws over everybody else.
Well, and that reminds me of the example of during the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a man who basically bought entire shelves full of hand sanitizer. I don't know if you remember this. And he bought tons and tons of hand sanitizer and then tried to price gouge it in the middle of the pandemic. And of course, there was a whole investigation. I don't even remember what happened to him. But all I remember is that there was so much disliking of that decision that not only did the guy have mental health issues afterwards, but it was a big societal no to do. It was like hoarding toilet paper at the time.
Right, yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting argument to be made if someone's going to buy it for the intent and the motive of profit and not for the motive of, say, just having it as a form of entertainment, or say you're a 10-year-old
Right.
child and you want it for Christmas or something because it's a cool toy,
Yeah.
but instead you're having it for profit reasons. I guess there is that moral dilemma when it
Right.
comes to I think anything with money has a moral dilemma, but in particular case, I would say the person has the right to do so, but at the same time, whether or not the values of that person is in the right mentality, society will only tell. So if society chooses to boycott the person who's price gouging these toys, then the value immediately goes to zero, and
Hmm.
the person ends up losing $12 because of said boycott. And
Yeah.
it would just be up to society to delete that demand in order for there to be zero value amongst these price gougers. But of course, that's unrealistic because you have people that are still willing to pay that $300 for something like a vintage toy like that. So
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Right. Yeah. So I do find that interesting that we started talking about delayed gratification, but in a very unorthodox way, because normally when you think of delayed gratification, it's not necessarily like prices or hoarding or anything like that. No, I just find it interesting because it goes to show that one little topic can have all of these different, like, not necessarily interpretations, but definitions to them, maybe.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I guess getting not necessarily back on track because that was a good point, but switching segments here. Um, I guess let's focus on the everyday, like, like people like you and me and our demographic of college students, as they're the only ones we can possibly relate to. And I don't know how well I do that, but I can try at least. Um, how do you do, fellow kids? Yes. But what is a good example of delayed gratification that you implement in your life personally?
I would say to relate to other college students, I the financial is a big one, but
Mhm.
considering we've already discussed the financial aspect of things and saving up and putting money into a long term investment or retirement account.
Mhm.
Um, Other than that, I would say abstinence. So sexual abstinence. That's a
Hmm.
for me. That's a big piece of not only identity for me, but it's a big piece of my everyday life because everyone knows that does come up in everyday culture and everyday conversations.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, it does in everyday conversations, but that's a story for another time. Uh,
Right.
but it is something that's heavy on delayed gratification that not many, I think, college students truly try or attempt to consider
Mhm.
in today's climate.
Well, yeah, so I'll kind of play devil's advocate, our favorite game real quick. Um, so Sawyer, what is this idea of abstinence? I mean, like I want to go to my local frat house and, the sorority girls are coming over and, I'm looking to have a little fun. What's wrong with that?
So if
Like, why can't I do that?
it depends on what your moral imperative is. So
Okay. And
if
define
you're
that real quick.
if you're looking for, say, moral imperative being kind of a value system or a motive behind your general actions in a broader sense, in a centralized sense. If you're looking for something like marriage in the future, or something like you want a happy family, you want kids,
Mhm.
you want that kind of life, which that culture is even changing from what it used to be. But
Uh-huh.
if that is what you're looking for, then you should refrain from sexual intercourse with said sorority girls or whoever it may be with. Um, and the reasons for that, not only bringing statistics into it, but the
Mhm.
more the higher your body count to keep slaying into it, um, the higher chances you are of having an unhappy marriage, which statistically may lead to divorce. And
Mm.
with that, you have to consider, if you have children, the children that are involved in the divorce. I know a lot of kids our age have gone through nasty divorces with our parents, and we have to think of how that affected us, and if we want to do that to our kids in the future.
Right. Yeah.
And it's tough to think that way, because, and this is the catch with instant gratification,
Right.
is you think, oh, that it's too far in the future. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, so what I do now is okay. But what we
Mm-hmm.
can do is we can infer from statistics, saying that certain behaviors lead to a certain outcome. And if those outcomes are inherently going to be in the future after said behaviors, then what we can see is a negative impact on married life. If you
Or
do,
like a tendency, yeah.
yeah, it's a pattern that's been seen throughout history.
Right.
So I guess
Yeah.
if you're looking for that moral imperative of marriage and children, then you should refrain. If you're not looking for that, if you're looking for, I don't know, say you want to be a businessman or whatever, and you want to be highly successful, but you don't want to get married. You just kind of want to maximize your happiness. If
Uh-huh.
you're considering the increased body count, there's actually statistics that say that a high body count can lead to mental health issues like anxiety, or even self consciousness. And within those statistics, it's incredible to see, because you may think as a guy, so us being two guys, that
Mm-hmm.
happiness will lead to something successful, will lead to
Right.
something great, but it almost it's a Chinese finger trap, because it leads you into not only desensitizing yourself to that feeling, that dopamine rush of sexual intercourse, but it's going to force you to then to get tired of it, to get tired of the same action. And
Right. And that's
it
kind of like tolerance, right?
yeah, like you start to build tolerance to that action, which it shouldn't be so common that you're 2 years down the road, you just don't feel it anymore. You just don't want that anymore, and you try and shoot for the prettiest and the prettiest and the prettiest, or the best and the best and the best. Then you realize that your expectations are completely out of this world.
Wait, but
And
Sawyer, I thought all guys want one thing all the time. You can't
and
be
that's
telling me that we get tired of it.
well, and it's and that's something that's really interesting that you bring up, because it's the notion that guys are out for just one thing. I will say is very common in society, or in today's world, for a guy to be thinking in a sexual manner for a large portion of the day. That is a
Mhm.
fact. I think if if there's going to be that desensitization, which not many guys can achieve that, because that means that you're doing it constantly enough to where there's no either withdrawal or heavy withdrawal,
Right.
or you're supplementing that in time to prevent a withdrawal.
Yes.
And if you're that one guy, or that percentage of guys, whatever it may be, that is banging every, say, sorority girl or whatever it is, then it's
Yes.
gonna it's gonna end up causing you to kind of lose interest. It's like, okay, think of it in terms of like a video game,
Okay.
right? Some people can play video games, the same video game like I have, for 5 years or 6 years straight. That
Yes.
some people are just built like that. Other people will play a game for, like, say, Dark Souls. They'll play a game like Dark Souls. They'll finish the game. They'll do all the side quests or whatever there is, and then they'll be done with it. They can play as much as they want, no matter how fun it is. But
Mhm.
sooner or later, you're gonna want the next best thing. It's like an iPhone. You're gonna want the next best thing.
And it's
And
not even that good.
no, like, well,
I mean, it's
Dark
got an
Souls.
extra camera, but, like, come on.
Yeah, like it. I mean, I think it depends on. It gets you to fall into that trap of. I mean, I guess like consumerism a little bit, where it brings up
Yeah,
the
sure.
idea of the iPhone, where it's you want to buy the newest iPhone, but it's like how much different is the newest iPhone from what you currently have? And
Right.
the catch with sex is you're not thinking that way. You're thinking of, not only are you completely like degrading women into a plot
Yeah.
to have sex with them if you're in such withdrawal, which is also just an entirely other story of just bad things to do.
Yeah.
But you're also messing with your own mental health and your own chemical balance when it comes to dopamine and happiness. And in the future, you're likely not going to have as great of a sex life if you're expending that sex life today. It's just how it is. It's like depreciation of equipment. It's or like the deterioration of a toy that you've been playing with for 5 or 6 years. Like if you use it too much now, it's not going to exist in the future.
Right. But Sawyer, I think it goes a bit deeper than that, to be fair. Like I'm loving what you're putting down because they all, there's a solid argument to be made for each like aspect that you're talking about. It's very multi-layered, but I'm going to take it one step further and say that like it messes you up in like ways that you wouldn't necessarily perceive, It's like we all know, like, oh yeah, you'll get chlamydia and die, like gotta catch them all, But but about the like, well, you take birth control, wear protection or whatever. Like there's a lot of things that everybody knows about sex and all of the warnings and whatever. And just as you were saying, like there's a tolerance aspect and there's like the fact that you're with so many different people. It's like, it makes it less good, less enjoyable. And I think that's very true on its own. But I would say that it's a bit more because now I guess this doesn't necessarily apply to everybody, but I think it does to some degree. It's just some people are more impacted than others, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going off of my opinion and what I've seen, and I obviously have no experience in any of this. Thank the Lord for that, but but you see, like the idea of sex is you're experiencing a level of closeness that is unlike anything else. Like I don't think you could ever achieve anything closer than what sex achieves. And obviously that would be good in the confines of a marriage where you know the person very well, you trust them, like actually trust them, and you love them, and it's not just a taking or exploiting relationship, like you actually love them.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving, you're committed to them, and part of that commitment is only being committed to them, as marriage is a sacrifice. You're essentially sacrificing all other women or all other men if you're a woman listening to this. Like it's designed, marriage is designed for that in a sense, and I'm not trying to insert my moral authority or values over people. Instead, I'm more positing this like meditation or thought exercise, if you will, that like when you're experiencing such a degree of closeness with somebody, it's like you are exposed, you are vulnerable, you are trusting not only your physical body to somebody else, but like you're experiencing all of these intense emotions, these feelings of what you would think is love or chemical balances, oxytocin, dopamine rushes. I mean, like all sorts of things like that. And it's, I don't know, like to have that level of closeness and, you know what I mean? Like with somebody, then to think about having it with somebody else, it's like, well, now you have to start over. Now you have to be vulnerable with somebody else. Now you have to walk around knowing that that person who you're not committed to, who probably broke up with you in a fiery like breakup or whatever, like now you have to know that that person got that close with you. And that can easily lead to these mental health issues that you were talking about. What do you think about all this stuff? Because I think that level of closeness, you're not designed to throw that away with somebody that you're not super close with.
I think so. I'll play a devil's advocate, and then I'll give what I generally think
Uh-oh.
about the more emotional aspect of things. And the devil's advocate for me is
Fire away.
always a fun time. Uh,
Okay.
it's the idea of some people, and some people do experience this, and I know some people who have felt this,
Mm-hmm.
where they feel no connection to it. They
Yes.
feel as if one, either it's already happened, so they're free to do it as much as they want,
Yes.
or they feel a sense of nihilism, or rather
Hmm.
anarchism. I would say anarchism is more closely related, and what I mean by that in terms of sex is there's no end. There's no meaning to any of sex. There's no emotional meaning. The only meaning there is your own physical pleasure. That's the
What
only
does
meaning there
that
is.
what does that do to you though?
It destroys the way you think. So
Hmm.
anarchism is a very, especially when pertaining to sex, it destroys your not only your mentality of other people, but it really makes you manipulative.
Hmm.
It I've known
Like a
somebody
psychopath.
like very similar to a psychopath. I would say more of a sociopath perhaps,
Okay.
but very much I've known people in the past, or at least one person, that treated sex as if it was a game. And it was a game for their own pleasure, their own not only physical pleasure, but their mental pleasure of achieving that.
Like you're
And
literally scoring. Like you've heard the term before, but
yeah,
like there's points involved.
there's points involved, and the consideration for the person who you're having sex with doesn't exist.
Hmm.
And you will do whatever you can to be able to achieve that score. And it's rather disgusting, and it's rather damaging to the people who are victims to this.
Yeah,
And
I would think so.
yeah,
Yeah. I shouldn't be laughing because this actually happens
yeah,
and these
it's
people, I mean, it's one thing to say like, oh yeah, this sociopath's evil and like, oh yeah, it's a terrible mentality, but this is real and this destroys people who are innocent victims who don't have a twisted worldview, you know?
yeah, and these are, mind you, a lot of the people who are victims of this mentality are victims who maybe experience a more emotional form or emotional result from sex. And this is where I'll get into my argument outside of the devil's advocate,
Okay.
where yeah, as someone, and it's really unfortunate for women because when you compare
Oh yeah.
biologically, for women and men produce more dopamine during sex, and I believe women produce more oxytocin,
Hmm.
if I'm remembering that correctly. And oxytocin is what creates a bond or a connection with the person who you are with or
Yes,
doing
it's
that action.
released upon physical touch.
Yes, and so women produce more oxytocin during sex, and when you have a lot of women, and the majority of women unfortunately regret having sex for their first time. And it's because one, men have less regret after having sex for the first time. And the reason is because there's more dopamine produced, and for women, it's more of a connection. And I want to go back to your,
Mm.
like, the example of what you were saying. It's like, how could you know that that person was that close to you? I know for me
Mm-hmm.
personally, I couldn't deal with that. That for me,
Right.
that would be crushing because I mean, I'm so restrictive about, say, being naked, that when I'm in like a public locker
We're
room,
all thankful.
I never strip fully nude. Never.
Okay.
Doesn't matter who's in front of me. And
That's good.
it's not even in front of, say, like a team member or whatever. Like that was never a thing for me. And it was interesting to see other people were not like that, but that it comes to show how much that would damage me if I did, say, build that emotional closeness to somebody and then
Right.
have it be either taken away or be lost. And
Right.
I bearing that would just be, it would be unbearable, and it might actually spiral you, or spiral me in this case, into something of a mental spat, which would not be not which would not be good.
Yeah.
Because out of that spat results in different mental problems. So I would
Wait,
say
yeah, go ahead, finish.
with emotion, there's that emotional closeness that sex brings you, that really it can hurt you in the long run. And to
Hmm.
tie it into kind of this talk of gratification and delayed gratification, it's it's very harmful in the future and in the long run for you. That's why marriages tend to be happier when you have less of a body count. Your
Yeah,
sex lives tend to be better if you have less of a body count. Um, there's so many things that you can do now, um, other than sex,
yeah,
to
yeah,
have a brighter future for not only your sex life but for your general happiness. And you may be happy now with what you're doing. You may be in the moment thinking that this person, I'm going to be with this person forever. You may be a false optimist,
yes,
but in reality, you don't understand what you're doing. You don't. In the moment, you're so caught up in that moment that you
right,
forget about all the context, all the meaning behind what you're doing with not only what you want to do with your life in the future,
yeah,
but your happiness in the future. And you lose that because of what sex does to you, what lust does to you, and when it twists your current mentality into wanting just this one thing, just for this instant
just this one thing,
moment of
yeah.
pleasure.
Hmm.
And what you're doing is you're sacrificing the future, and it's not good. It's
Right.
disastrous.
And Sawyer, it's interesting because I would say like we're disregarding people like sociopaths and everything like that. Like most people would generally agree that they would want to find love, you know? Everybody wants love. They want to love and they want to be loved, you know?
Hmm.
Everybody's looking for that connection. And it doesn't matter what your opinions of sex are. It doesn't matter what your values are. It doesn't matter if you're religious or secular. Everybody wants love.
Yes.
And that's just kind of the truth. That's how we're all programmed. And I just find it interesting because love is inherently rooted in delayed gratification. I mean, commitment is, I used it in the context of like sacrificing all other partners for just one of them, but commitment's like sticking by them, not running away when they don't want to handle problems. When they do handle problems, not running away like when it gets bad, actually handling these problems when they come up, wanting to handle them, like all sorts of things go under commitment. And there's going to be hardships, there's going to be challenges. And on top of that, it's like now I have to restrain having some of the most like pleasurable activities, aka sex. It's like now I have to refrain from doing that. It's like, well, why bother? What's in it for me, right?
Hmm.
And instead of continuing this monologue, Sawyer, what's in it for me, man? What's in it for me?
Nothing. And why I say that is because love isn't about you. It's really not. If a couple is in love with each other, there should be enough self-sacrifice to where both are not only intertwined in their
Mm-hmm.
needs, but they're inevitably getting what they need, what's necessary of them to feel loved.
Yes.
If both are loving each other adequately, that is. But
Mm-hmm.
on the topic of that sex not being or sex not being a variable in say a couple's love, I've had this view since for a very long time, and
Okay.
it's a philosophy around relationship. And within relationships, you should be able to have a solid relationship without sex. If you can't do that, then your relationship is not centered around love. It's centered around lust.
Mm-hmm.
If your relationship, say the sex dries up in your relationship and your relationship falls apart, it means that the motive behind the relationship wasn't self-sacrifice. It
Mm.
was your own pleasure.
Right.
And that doesn't say, or that doesn't mean that love or that sex does not have love, which sex can be loving if you are doing something to say pleasure your partner or whatever that is. But what I've always believed is that without a relationship should be able to survive if it is truly centered around love without sex. That is the ultimate test. as the
Right.
ultimate test of a relationship.
And
And
that's
if it
the basis behind like waiting till marriage, right?
precisely, and if that person is the right person, one, you did not sacrifice that either your abstinence or your innocence of, say, waiting for marriage with this person who you broke up with. So there's not that the emotional connection that we had talked about earlier is not there. You're not worried about, oh, this person, I got so close to them and they have that closeness, but we're not together. You won't feel that. You'll feel a sense of that, but not
Mm-hmm.
the sense, not to the extreme that sex will give or add to that. So you're saving yourself not only in that sense, but if you do get married, think about how loving that is for you to get married and then to not only understand that sex is it's like an addition to marriage. It's a beautiful addition to marriage that kind of solidifies that love. You
Yeah.
basically just made a pact saying, and this is if you're a virgin. This it helps if you're a virgin, but if not, it's okay. You can still be abstinent and not a virgin.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are a virgin, then and both of you are, you can say, "You are the only person that I have done this act with," and the other person can say the same. And because you are married, you are now completely intertwined in that love. For some people, it's eternal. For some people, it's until death. And with that love proceeding until death, you know that there's kind of a pact. It's kind of a covenant with your significant other and or your spouse at this point. And it's a rather beautiful thing. And it's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about anybody other than your partner. That's what love is. Love isn't temporary emotional gratification. It's not
It's only
dopamine.
abused as such, you know?
Yeah, it's you should be knowing how to supplement your relationship with other forms of love instead of taking what I would say is like the cheating route, which is sex. That's like, let's get to the end point quickly, which I think a lot of people try and do is like, and okay, this is something that I might push as a rhetorical or question
Okay.
is at what point does a relationship hit its peak, if ever? And use a colloquial definition. Is
Hmm.
it Is it when you guys hold hands? For some people, it is. Is it when you guys kiss? When you make out? Some people, it is. Is it
Yeah.
when you have sex? For some people, it is. But what comes after sex? What comes after home plate? Is there anything after? Are you stuck in this void of continually running from third to home, even though you've already reached home? Is it an endless cycle of just sex,
Good
or
point.
is
Nobody
or
thinks about it as an inning rather than,
exactly?
you know, they think of it as like one round, but that's not how baseball works. You've got
Hmm.
tons of innings.
Yes, and with the concept of paradoxically running in a circle to reach home plate multiple times, you're not achieving anything unless your home plate is marriage. Or even if you host your home plate as sex, have third base be your marriage. Because if you think about it, sex is kind of the limit. Like the next thing after that would literally be the game ending and you both dying, but
Mm.
dying together. But arguably, marriage should come first because if the limit or the say the asymptotal or the asymptote of your relationship or yes, the asymptote of your relationship is sex, then you can't do anything else, especially when you're dating. You're in such a volatile state when you're in a dating phase. And
Right.
once you hit that asymptote, I would not be surprised if that fear kicks in. What's next? You go from hand holding to kissing to sex. What comes after sex? You guys just like stand around with each other? You just sit on a couch
Well, I
doing
mean,
nothing?
I guess to answer that question, I mean, when you look at a marriage in that context, it's like, well, you have kids, and then those kids have their kids, and it's like, it's not necessarily pleasurable, at least in the sense of like physical things, you know. Well, okay,
Yeah.
okay, I hope not, you know, but like. So anyway, but yes, It's not like that, but that is definitely something. It goes to show that there can be an escalation. And I shouldn't necessarily word it like that, because it shouldn't be an escalation, because that has like a negative connotation. It should be more of a development or an evolution, if you will. Because I mean, the point of sex anyway is to have children. We kind of forget about that in the age of like contraceptions and stuff. And I'm not necessarily making an argument for or against contraceptions. I'm just saying that the fact that we can limit sexual reproduction and have it be kind of a socially acceptable activity, it goes to show that our mindsets have changed. At least it's like we're like, oh yeah, sex does produce children, and that's a thing that we do. But yeah, I was gonna say something earlier. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention a quick point that like the thing to understand a distinction that, and I'm gonna be talking to like the virgins that are listening to this, I guess, like sex isn't bad. And I know that's obvious, but I feel the need to say it because it's easy to forget that even though you're remaining abstinent, it's not that sex is not important and not good, Because like the distinction is it's good when it's maintained and controlled and saved, that delayed gratification. It's saved for a time where you're meant to have it. I believe it's the Song of Songs or Song of Solomon, which is a book in the Bible. It's like, don't awaken love until it pleases, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's a time and a place for that, to have sex. And when you have it in the proper context, and whether it's marriage or not, I'm not going to tell you what you, as in like the listener, like you can do whatever you want and believe whatever you want, but at the very least there's a time for it. There's a time and a place for it. For some that's marriage, for others it's not. But it's important. It's vulnerable. It's loving. It's supposed to be. And if it's not, then it's not the right time. But for those people who do understand that it is an aspect of delayed gratification, it's important to know that it is a good thing and that it shouldn't entirely be denigrated as just this awful act or whatever. Like, oh, sex is awful. No. It's supposed to be beautiful. But we need to treat it as such. And I feel like we, as mankind, have been giving it a bad rap. We've been making it disgusting. I mean, look at the media, the news media, and the music we listen to, and the TV shows we watch. I mean, talk about glorification, but it's not really glorifying it. Like a beautiful chapel. Now that's glorifying God. But you really think Cardi B twerking on a music video is glorifying sex? No, it's making it seem disgusting. It's making it seem bad, You're not glorifying it. You're just
You're devaluing it.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, which I think I've always laughed at using pop culture and ever since really the 60s, understanding how culture has kind of shifted towards desensitizing people to sex. And it's not only in like social circles as sex becomes something common to and depending on what social circle you're in. I'm sure high schoolers experience this quite a bit, but there's almost a constant talk of sex. Like people are almost like extremely open to talking about it and their sexual encounters, and it's become kind of like, because it's been ingrained. If you listen to music and modern day music, either pop or hip hop or whatever it is, and there's a lot of sexual lyrics there, you can listen to it and visualize what those lyrics mean, and what they might play out to be in real life, and you can really think like, huh, that's kind of disgusting. Like if you take a step back and you look at it from a perspective of an objective perspective, saying, what's the purpose of sex? Is it for having children? Is it for personal pleasure?
Is it to love somebody?
Exactly. And what's really interesting to me is culturally we've tried to inch away from objectifying people sexually. That's I really enjoyed watching this kind of movement take place, where we shouldn't be sexualizing women, and women should not be sexualizing men. There should be a shared respect for either sex,
Right.
and or whoever it is. There should be a shared respect for that person. At least give them that, if nothing else. And when we look at pop culture, it's doing exactly the opposite. It's not only ingraining the idea or thought of sex in everyone's minds, but it's basically boiling sex down to just what the action is. It's boiling it down to, I won't get into like the details, but listen to the lyrics of WAP.
There you go. Yes.
It's literally boiling it down to those lyrics and completely disregarding the people involved or the person involved. And you're not only are you not thinking about yourself and your own future mental health, or as one would say, mental health. You're not thinking about your own mental health, but you're also just completely disregarding the person who you're doing this with. And if you truly loved and respected that person, not only would you understand that by doing this act, you would be sacrificing their mental health for your pleasure, but you would also have to understand that with this action, with the degrading of sex, this person is probably going to leave emotionally damaged. Like, not only in the short term,
guilt,
but in the long term. Yeah. And how I've always thought of this is, if you and your partner are, say your partner's not ready for sex, which let's accommodate those who say are not abstinent and who are maybe have sex with their partner if it's a long-term relationship, and say your partner is not ready for sex yet. And you feel a slight guilt. You feel the guilt that this person's not ready and that you might have just pushed this upon them, because it almost seems selfish. Because if that person was truly ready, and I want to go to what you said, with a relationship being a form of development, you're developing constantly, and you're developing through these stages of the relationship. If one person's not ready and you push that without it naturally happening, I would feel guilty. I know I personally would, because it would feel almost selfish. It's
forced too.
It's forced. It's selfish, and it's forced, and it gets borderline narcissistic. And I know couples, and to be extremely vague, I know couples that one person's abstinent and the other person's not. And as someone who is abstinent myself, I look at that couple and I say, that's not right. How is that possible? Because if one person is abstinent and the other person is not abstinent, that means one person is looking through the lens of sex, looking at things through a sexual lens, and one person is looking through the lens of love. And not to say that the person who's not abstinent isn't looking for love, but there's almost, arguably speaking, in these relationships that I've experienced, a certain level of personal gain or motive from the person who's not abstinent. And
well, there's a higher likelihood, though. There's a higher likelihood, which is what you're touching upon. Yes. But I mean, you can generalize with the likelihoods, but you can't necessarily make an argument against it, because I mean, who's to say what is going through that person's mind? I mean, some people are not virgins anymore. They fell to the temptation, or they were used, as we touched upon earlier, like victims, or they just weren't sure about it. It could be any reason under the sun, but they regret what they did, and that could give those people stronger convictions than even people who don't even know what sex is, like that much abstinent,
Yeah.
So I guess it's just like to be careful about like how to necessarily view these relationships, because it can go either way. But yes, I do agree that there does tend to be a likelihood of like, okay, well, if you did it once, then you could be more likely to do it again. And obviously you would assess based on their personality and how the relationship goes and everything like that.
Yeah. I think if you look at statistics, and with women this is really interesting, where after one sexual interaction, that's like I said earlier, women who have tend to regret it for the first time, they tend to actually become abstinent after their first time having sex. Men are a lot less likely to become abstinent after their first time having sex.
Mm.
And again, that's likely because of the production of oxytocin with women and not with men. And with men, if you produce dopamine, think of an addiction. You're going to want more dopamine. You're going to want that feeling of pleasure. When women, when you feel that connected, and then you lose that connection, you don't want to lose it again. Like
Right.
and that logically makes sense to me. That seems realistic to me.
Well,
And
you're
so
also, you also have to consider the big thing of who's more at risk from doing an activity like that. The person who just delivers or the person who receives.
yeah,
Like when the women have the burden of dealing with like birthing the child, it's like if it's unwanted, like that's a whole other story. Like obviously we're focusing on the emotional things as that's the more common issue with our demographic, but there are cases where it gets a lot more messy when you bring an entity into this world, you know?
well, yeah, well, and that ties into instant gratification and delayed gratification, where as a woman, you have to consider those ramifications of the possibility of childbirth, and whatever route you choose, it's going to be worse than your current situation unless that's what you're expecting.
Yes.
And at least for the short term, whatever the long term is unbeknownst because of the amount of variables. And I don't know what your decision is, but making the assumption that this does happen, your life will be changed. That is undoubtedly true. Your life will be changed. So I think there is that definite pressure of saying, okay, do I even want to risk this? Do I even want to risk sacrificing my entire future, all my plans, whatever plans you have career wise, whatever plans you have, emotionally, or family plans, or whatever it may be,
Yep.
and you're jeopardizing whatever those plans are because of a little gratification now, because of you're gaining this emotional attachment to somebody that it could be lost in an instant, and this person does not care because this person does not have to rear this child,
Right,
and
yeah.
this, to even conceptualize that balance, it's so unbalanced. And if I can't speak because I think if I were a woman, I would not take that risk knowing the
Right.
ramifications. And I get some women do, but at the same time some women face the consequences for those actions, and that it's a great example of the consequences of receiving instant gratification instead of delaying it for a much much better outcome. It's all about risk and reward, really, and the time period over which risk and reward spans.
Right. So kind of moving on from that as we've been talking about that for a while. A lot of great points. Um I guess before we do that, did you have any like closing thoughts on it?
I think people who are abstinent, or even are not abstinent, I think it people should have the ability to say that they're abstinent and either not receive any grief for it or not receive any backlash for it, because even though a majority of society is not abstinent, statistically speaking that is true, one can say that just because someone who is abstinent does not align with the rest of the people around them, it doesn't mean that that concept is bad. In fact, as we've argued this entire time, the concept might actually be better than the status quo or the current state of things. So, just to conclude on the idea of abstinence and on the ideas of sex, when you're considering love and you're considering how sex plays a role in you loving the other person, you must consider the end results. You must consider your motives, your moral prerogatives, your values, and what you're trying to achieve, and think, is it beneficial for the other person? Because that's what love is.
Right. And like you have to think about your stage in your life. You have to think about what you want. And you have to think about, and as we established, like sex is a very good, beautiful thing in the right context. So at the very least you can imagine it like, hey, I know I'm not having this now, but this is going to be really nice when I have it with somebody I really love someday, you know?
Yeah.
And to be able to say that, not just say that, because I think everybody wants to say that, but to actively like go along with your words and having a sense of integrity, it's like, yeah, man. And that's not me preaching here. It's like, that is genuinely very hard to do. We're lustful creatures, you know?
Yeah.
We want to have that. We're biologically driven to breed. It's hard for us to want to wait, especially when we love somebody, and we're just dating them, you know? Like,
Yeah.
of course that might make you want to have thoughts about it, but keep it in your pants, dog. Keep it in your pants.
Indeed.
But anyway, yeah, we'll kind of move on from that now as we've been talking about it. I guess as not a closer, but the final kind of idea behind delayed gratification that I would like to discuss with you, is this idea of, obviously it's good to have delayed gratification. It's good to put off the now to have things for later that are much better for us. And it takes a sacrifice to do so. But what are some aspects of, or like, what are examples of when instant gratification is actually better? And before you answer necessarily, or you know what? No, I'll just ask you. I'll see what you think first.
I think, grappling with budgeting and finances and things like that, there is a certain level of instant gratification that you can allow yourself. You can give yourself some room because you don't want to be miserable. You need to be able to feed yourself. And
Right.
one thing I've grappled with, I've struggled with, and my friends may not recognize it, but when I go out to eat or I go out to get food, and I see the receipt, it like kills a part of my heart. But I have to recognize that I just spent valuable time with friends over a meal, and that's in effect inherently in that action itself, that is a form of delayed gratification. Or it's not necessarily even delayed gratification. It's more of an instant and delayed gratification. It's you get the best of both worlds when you go out to eat with friends. You may spend that money, say, putting it into a Roth IRA or whatever investment account you may have, but
Right.
you also can't be so frugal that you don't spend any time with your friends. And
Right.
by eating with your friends, not only are you creating a connection with them, and you're either sharing culture or whatever you may be sharing, what you're doing is you're building that relationship for future endeavors. You're building that relationship so that there is some sort of stronger relationship down the road.
Which in turn is kind of an investment. It's not financial, but it is an investment.
It's an investment, but not only is it a good investment, but you're also getting an instant return. You're eating good food, right? Like if you
Right.
like McDonald's and you go to McDonald's with your friends and you're building that relationship with your friends while supplementing your current craving for McDonald's, then you're
You trying to tell me something here?
no, because I
You
love
hungry?
McDonald's too. I am actually quite hungry, but it's because I'm always hungry. I think
Okay.
I think with food though, it's having the experience to just go and eat with somebody. It doesn't matter what food it is. Hopefully, it's good food, and hopefully, you wouldn't force feed yourself bad food. But it
Yes.
it kind of it goes back to that best of both worlds. You get an instant return, a dividend per se, and you also get that raise on investment. You get that investment in those people. You're investing in those people. And
Right.
it's not for your own gain necessarily, because I'm sure there's no reason why they would eat with you unless they liked you. So it's likely that they're doing the exact same thing. So it's everyone is getting a mutual return on investment immediately while also building that long-term relationship or that long-term investment. So that's an example I could think of that will give you both without sacrificing one or the other. And I guess for anyone who likes economics or anyone who's a little who's more quantitative over qualitative, meaning if you like numbers over words, I'd say
Uh-huh.
when we put value on things like time with friends and spending time with friends, it's kind of unquantifiable, but you can put a price on it per say your mental health, or you can try and conceptualize a monetary or a money value on that relationship, which whether or not you want to, it's a good way to compare that investment. And you shouldn't be thinking of this as like a solely a quantitative investment when you're dealing with people, because it's
Right.
a qualitative investment. It's an emotional investment. But if you really want to put the numbers together, I would argue, and this varies per person, that having that investment in those friendships, having those relationships, not only do those people build you up for future endeavors, for future obstacles, and they help you overcome those challenges, but it allows you to be happier in the short and the long term. And you shouldn't be making yourself unhappy. That's if you're making yourself unhappy um, now without any future return on happiness, then you're doing something wrong.
Or
you're
you're setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly. You're setting yourself up for a spiral that could severely hurt you in the long run. So
Right.
you really want to enjoy those moments, whatever moments you can grasp now, because time is limited and you're not going to be able to buy that time back. So spend it
Right.
wisely.
I'm glad you mentioned this example, because the thing um the thing that I was pondering about, like, saying myself, was an example that I thought of recently of the idea of retirement. And I find it to be interesting because people our age, and really just everybody's life until age of retirement, thinks about, well, that day where you no longer have to work anymore.
Hmm.
And it sounds great and everything, but well, it's multi-layered. It's like, if you hate your job, obviously it's great. If you don't like working of any kind, it's gonna be great. If um and if you work hard enough, that sacrifice that leads to delayed gratification, that gratification will be the form of retirement. So retirement is something you kind of have to earn for yourself. It is one of the best examples of delayed gratification, really. Um, but one of the things that I've been thinking about is, you can spend your entire life, like, so I'm friends with I have a lot of friends who are Chinese, right? And they tell me, it's even like a meme, like a joke at this point, like having Asian parents where they're like super strict, and it's like, you got like why you no doctor yet, like
Yeah.
that stereotype. And it's interesting because a lot of these kids, and honestly, I wouldn't say it's an Asian thing as much as it's like immigrant culture. I'd like to label it that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like anybody who's like leaving their country to come to a different one for a better life has this conception that you have to just work hard as possible and that's the only way to find success. In some cases, yes, that is the case because you come to a new country with only like, 5 pennies in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
It's the classic Ellis Island story, basically. But what happens to a lot of these kids is, they grow, they're honor roll in school, they're getting the best grades, they're taking all of these extracurriculars, they're always busy, always stressed out. And sometimes, a lot of the time they make it, they actually become doctors, they become lawyers, they have high paying jobs, right?
Yeah.
But then you realize to a certain point, and again, I'm trying not to generalize because I know I use this example of like just stories that my Chinese friends have told me, but like really you can't generalize these things. Everybody has their own different outcomes. Some people genuinely are happy when they reach that level of success,
Mm-hmm.
But for some people it's like, well, let's say you achieved the dream of delayed gratification. You got super success by sacrificing your entire life, and now you can have a great retirement. But then you realize that, oh yeah, I'm retired at like 65, and my health is corroding, and I only have a few years left to live. Where did my youth go? And I think that's something that some people don't necessarily consider. Some people are too much on the end of like, oh yeah, I don't really care about the future. I only care about now. And that's where we get into the problems like sex that we were talking about, like instant gratification. People obsessed with all sorts of things. Or like the people who are always getting food with their friends. They have no money saved up in their bank accounts. It becomes an issue. But you also have those people who don't necessarily, they're so future driven. They're so proactive that you don't necessarily realize that there's a lot to your youth that you should capitalize on, because it's weird. Like, there's definitely a balance between instant and delayed gratification, I'd argue, because life is a timeline. It's like different points of your life have different circumstances. And when you're younger, you're never going to have any point of or to that point, like when you're younger. That's when you're at, like when you're a young adult, you're like at your peak mental and physical performance. Like 18 to 20 something, like young 20s, like I go climbing and everything, that's something I enjoy. I go bouldering at the gym. I'm able to do some crazy stuff. I'm not going to be able to do that when I'm 50,
Yeah.
I can be in really good shape, but my body's going to start breaking down just because that's the natural order of things. So I can work really hard, and that would definitely help me. I think that working hard definitely helps people in the long run. It's a good mindset to have. It's certainly better than not working hard. But there are times where, like you said, it's just nice to go out and get some food with friends. It's good to go to that climbing gym. It's, like you're only going to have those moments now. You're only going to have your college buddies all in the same place. You might have a reunion someday, but like these times are unique. And yes, you do have to work hard a lot of the time. And it is for a better future and a more comfortable, sustainable one. And that's nothing to laugh at. But sometimes you gotta enjoy what you have now because it's temporary.
Yeah. So that's why I believe in a true balance. So if
Mm-hmm.
if you're gonna balance yourself, say you want that retirement, that's people don't say put 100% of your paycheck into your whatever your investments are. Instead,
Right.
what a lot of people say is divvy it up per percentages. So it's put a certain percent towards if you have loans, put a certain percentage towards loans, get rid of the loans, put a certain percentage towards your IRA or whatever, and have a certain percentage of, say, groceries and general expenses, bills, whatever it may be, and then leave a certain percentage for just mess around. Just that's what I try and do is I try and leave a certain amount of money left over to be able to go get food with friends, or say if I want to save up that kind of screw around money, then take a trip to Chicago or whatever it may be.
But in a
It's
sense, isn't that would you say that's a balance between the two? Or that's simply a product of your delayed gratification? Because you only have that money because you worked, which was delayed.
Yes, and in the span of working though, I was also getting an instant return or nearly instant return. And I'm saying
Hmm.
instant comparatively because of course if you're being paid bi-weekly, yes, you're going to have a delayed gratification say factor of 2 weeks. But at the same
Yes.
time, you can have that money and then for the rest of after that first 2 weeks, you're going to have some spending money to just kind of go around and do what you want to do. Go to the county fair if you want to, whatever it is. Like you're going to there's a chance that yes, that's going to be a product of your delayed gratification, but that's
Right.
where that reasonability comes in, if that makes sense. Like you're not going out with friends constantly because you're on a spending budget. You have a certain amount of money allocated towards what you should spend on messing around and doing stuff that's not related to school or work or whatever it is, and you're also putting money aside for your future. So you're kind of tackling the present and the future at the same time using your past decisions. So it's if you really
Right.
prep for it and you really do it well, you should be able to be happy now and retire happy later. If you do it right and you balance it correctly. Now there are, of course, as you said, there are those extremes where you retire but you kill yourself in the in the process of doing so, and then you
Yes.
realize that all that time has just gone to waste. And then there are those people that just don't care about their budget or will do whatever they can to just spend as much money as possible now, which makes for them sense, but in the grand scheme of things, no sense at all.
Well, until you're working at like Burger King, $12 an hour when you're trying to feed 4 kids, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I want to become an attorney is because with understanding gratification, understanding how much work I have to put in now. It's a lot of work. And it's going to be a lot of work. I know the challenge that's ahead, but I'm gonna try and enjoy it because even though I kind of dislike being in an undergrad, I kind of dislike not just being able to go straight into law. It's the experiences I'm experiencing now, the people who I'm meeting now, the relationships that I'm building now in undergraduate school are so important for
Mhm.
law school. So I kind of have to bear that burden of yes, I have to I need to go through this whole process, but make the best of that process. Like find the silver lining because not
Right.
not everything is going to like if you can make a job enjoyable, if you are working say temporarily at Burger King and you somehow make that job enjoyable by creating a meaningful value or motive behind your job. So let's take
Right, like
Burger King.
SpongeBob.
Like SpongeBob. Somehow he turns being a fry cook into something that's exciting and fun that he wants to return to every day. If your job is not
Right.
like that, then you might want to find a different one. But if you can find meaning in your work, if you can do what you can do like SpongeBob has done, then you'll be happy now. I don't know how SpongeBob spends his money, but what I do know is that in that certain scenario now, you can either save the money you get from being a fry cook while being happy being a fry cook, or you can go waste it all and then realize what am I working for because you have no overarching goal. You have no overarching like achievement. If your goal is to become a lawyer and you're working at Burger King, and one, yes, you're gonna want to save up money. But if you're spending all your money now, and then you're realizing, wait, I'm not achieving my goal, well, you might want to
Right.
reassess your decision making.
Well,
So if
also, yeah, like goals are important. I mean, it's not just about the money. I mean, these NFL players, they make millions of dollars just playing football, which to most families in America is like, like the Thanksgiving pastime, you know,
hmm
like just backyard football. So imagine getting paid millions of dollars professionally to do that. But a lot of these people blow it all away.
yeah, which it reminds me of that SpongeBob episode where he does get rich. Like he's like extremely wealthy, and he blows all that money, just gives it away to people who aren't there to actually be his friend, but people who are there for gold digging reasons. And
Is that the one with the stand where he's like handing out bags of free money? It's like, come again. I'm gonna get back in line.
I think it's the one where he turns his house into a mansion, and
Okay.
like the floors are glossy and everything, and Mr. Krabs is like trying to get his money and
Oh
doesn't.
yeah, and he like looks ridiculous and he's got like those lips and stuff.
Yep, yeah.
Okay.
It's like extremely extravagant, just for no reason, unnecessarily extravagant
Yeah.
and rich. But he blows it all. What he could have done was spent it gradually. Like most people, when you win the lottery, you hear these horror stories of people just spending it all on useless garbage and then becoming poor. And it's like, okay, if what you could have done was, yes, you could give it some to charity, you do what you want to do, but you also have to be able to sustain yourself. You also have to be able to just say like, okay, I might want to go to school so I can have a solid stream of income, or you could do what investment or hedge fund managers do and just make
Right.
your daily livings off of dividends. Like it's if you have a lottery amount of money, then you can do that. But if you just spend it all without realizing the actual opportunities you have with that money, well, then you're losing out on, again, the future, the delayed gratification that comes with spreading out your spending and doing all that kind of stuff.
Well, so like the lottery, that's an interesting thing you brought up because if you think about life like Minecraft, right? Like you kids are familiar with it, right? You're playing survival mode, and you could kind of think of real life like that. Like you have to work for everything you have, just like how in the game you have to like kill animals for their meat and farm and punch wood, which is somehow very effective. Um, to make tools and stuff. It's like that's the process of making money in real life. But if you think about winning the lottery, that's like switching to creative mode, like immediately. And that's a level of instant gratification that's unlike any other because, for one, it's random. It's not like sex, as we were talking about earlier, where it's like it's a conscious decision. It's like, yes, you bought a lottery ticket, but you don't know you're going to win the dang thing. So when you do, it's like, well, I've had like the game of life is to work and accumulate your wealth slowly, as it takes years to do that. Years preparation, hard work, sacrifice, risks, like all of these things. But the lottery is just like, oh, here you go. Like in Minecraft creative mode, you don't have to punch wood anymore. You can, that sounds wrong, but you don't have to punch a tree anymore, but you can just get infinite wood planks. You don't have to mine for diamonds, just get infinite diamonds.
Yep.
But unlike creative mode, it's not infinite diamonds.
You think it
And you
is?
can blow the money away. Yeah, you do think it is, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which this reminds me a lot of it's the concept of stoicism, or at least one of the ideas within stoicism, where your true happiness, like money can buy happiness. That's a whole nother discussion. But
Mm-hmm.
to answer that question very easily is everyone needs food, everyone needs water. If you have enough food to provide your, or if you have enough money to provide yourself with enough food and water and perhaps shelter, then you're going to be happy. But you
Right.
shouldn't go overboard with it. If you keep yourself in a minimalist state, you're going to end up being happier and without the stress of not being able to survive, because you have those funds to survive. You just
Right.
don't need to overdo it. And throughout your entire life, you can live happily on the least amount of spending possible, as long as you're keeping yourself alive and without the stress of one either getting fired or whatever it may be, the stress of possibly losing the opportunity to live, losing the ability to survive, because there's not going to be that pressure if you win the lottery. So
Right.
it's a very it's quite a humbling concept where you can just think in terms of survival and no nothing else in life really has to worry you, because you're just living, and you can add on different values and different goals to just living, but you should be, instead of just living, you should be living, but not to a
Right.
point that decreases your happiness.
No, I agree. And like, yeah, otherwise if you have too much, I mean, if you have too little, then everything you're doing is to just survive, and that's obviously a different story. But if you have too much, it's almost like the idea of gluttony.
Yep.
It's like just you're just consuming. Like I feel like gluttony is one of the least understood sins out of like the seven deadly sins, because it's like, what is it? Does it mean you just eat a lot? It's not necessarily that. It's like you consume and you don't really have any regard of what you're consuming.
Yeah.
Like you go to a buffet and just eat all of the food you can. You don't really care about it. You just stuff yourself with no regard, and you don't care about your weight or anything like that. It's really unhealthy and everything like that. Or you could go to a buffet and enjoy the food and not starve yourself, or and not stuff yourself too much. Now, I guess personally that's not how I do it. I kind of eat until I can't anymore.
As you do at
But
a buffet. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm a bad example, um but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And we were talking about like Cardi B in the media in regards to sex, but it is interesting to just think about how we are greatly impacted by our mass consumerist society. And it only makes the concept of delayed gratification even harder when you realize. I mean, think about it like this, Sawyer. Back then, like 30 years ago, there were only so many shows that were that good. And if you wanted to watch a show, you had to tune in to the right time, at the right place. And it was like everybody watched Seinfeld or whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gathered at, I don't know what time it was on or what station it was on, but you know, whatever station or at the right time, and you watch Seinfeld. Now you can watch whatever show you want, no matter if it was from like 60 years ago or a current one. You can watch it on any platform. You can watch it anytime you want, anywhere you want, on any device, even your frickin' refrigerator or your toaster at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it used to be a joke saying you could run it on your refrigerator, but I think you can actually do that now. That's crazy. It's really crazy to me. But anyway, like, you can binge a show all in one sitting. I mean, you'll kill your entire day, you know, but you can do that now. So it's just interesting how the mere functions of society, like, there's a shift between having to stay tuned at 7 p.m. At this news station to catch the latest news, or wait for your local newspaper to deliver it to you. Now you can just go on a website anytime you want on any device. And it's, these are great technological advancements, but it's not making delayed gratification any easier. In fact, we're very spoiled to it. You
Yeah,
know?
I think I think things have become so easy for people that there's this conception that delayed gratification isn't needed anymore. So
Mm.
if you have consumerism and you have also like easy access to almost everything, uh,
Yes, yes.
it's to the point where it's like, how much did you have to work for that? Like
Well, and also, do you appreciate any of it?
yeah,
You
like
know?
if you're lacking gratitude, like there's a big not only are we a consumeristic society, but we're also a society that lacks gratuity. We're a society that lacks the ability to say thank you. There have been plenty of occasions where I'm at a restaurant and someone doesn't say thank you to the waitress or waiter, and for when I see that, it's like it's kind of something small, clearly, but it's really
Right.
something big. If it happens multiple times, then it's like what this person is giving you a service. This person is serving you, and you're not
Right.
showing gratitude for that. Or even like people with their parents. This one gets me all the time. It's
Ooh,
when
yeah.
people with their parents, they don't understand how much their parents do for them. Like it's
Right.
like even if your parents are, um, say the weird people or whatever, or nasty people, you have to understand that say they're paying for your college. Like if you hate your parents, but they're paying for your college, pay for your own college. It if you're really that have a
Don't bite the
lack
hand
of
that feeds you.
if you have a lack of gratitude, like if your parents are paying for your college, maybe thank them, maybe call them every once in a while, and give them a message saying like, "Hey, thank you, like thank you for what you've done for me." Like even just saying that, not only will it make them happy, but it'll make you happy. Just be grateful. Be grateful for what you have. Like look at countries that don't have nearly as much of garbage as you have. Like it like if
Yeah,
like
yeah.
really look at it. Like if you can the amount of clothing you have. Like I know people that have like what I consider a closet worth of clothing, which generally consists of like 3 of the same shirts and 3 of the same pants and maybe
Uh-huh.
a pair of athletic shorts. It's like some people have like 10 times that and they never like give away their clothing. They just keep all of it. And to me, it's like I look at that and I'm like, huh, like go to a place either in the country or somewhere around the world where someone only has one pair of pants and a single shirt. And do you
Right.
do you think that and ironically in many cases in those countries their level of happiness is higher than ours? And
Right.
people need to start asking that question. Why is that? Why is it that I have 20 shirts and this person has one shirt and they're happier than me? How is this possible? Well, perhaps it's because they're grateful for what they have. Perhaps it's because they're not complaining about not getting the newest iPhone. Or they're not complaining about whatever it may
But
be.
it's got 3 cameras.
Screw the 3 camera. It's like it's too big. Too big.
Too
It's like
big.
yeah, I have baby hands, dude. I can't hold that.
I do like a phone that actually fits in my pocket, to be fair.
Yeah, like the 6S is perfect. Even with an OtterBox, it fits in my hand. But it's like there's this level of complaining and level of expecting that everything should go your way. That when something does go your way, you don't thank anybody for that. You just expect more. You're just expecting to consume more and more and more. Like people, it's ironic as well because people who are completely against the idea of consumerism and materialism or whatever it may be, they're the ones who are always asking for more. And then when they get
Right.
more, they're not looking at it from a third person perspective. They're looking at it from the perspective of, yes, you should be asking for less, but I deserve more. It's very ironic. It's it's like it's kind of funny if you think about it, but it's also kind of scary and sad because there's a lot of people that don't recognize that when you're not gracious for other people's actions, not only does it disincentivize those people from doing like good actions or services for other people, but it makes you spoiled in the long run. It spoils you. And you don't realize it until you really impact
Right.
someone negatively who's done something magnificent for you. and you just didn't thank them. And then you see that play out, and you start to realize what I'm doing is wrong.
Kind of
What?
like the sex thing, you know?
Yeah,
Like, this person loves me.
yeah. Or even take something as simple as a friendship. Like
Hmm.
if all you're doing is you're extracting, let's use extracting is a fun word to use. You're extracting everything you can out of a friendship for your own personal gain without giving anything back whatsoever. Like
Uh-huh.
it's and then you don't realize it until that friendship ends, and you're like, hold on, what happened here? I was getting so much. Like you don't realize what you have until it's gone. And
Right.
that whole saying, I like to quote that from The Office. It's very much, it's so true in the sense that you're not grateful for what you have in the moment until it goes away, until that person goes away, until that person that you love so much goes away. You may realize
Right.
it a little bit, but you're not fully recognizing that in the moment. And perhaps it may even bolster your relationship with this person or with this thing or whatever it is if you are grateful towards that idea, concept, person, whatever it is that you have that you are grateful towards.
And you know, it's kind of interesting. This might be a weird turn that I'm about to make. Um but it kind of applies to yourself too. Like, being grateful for your own life and your own worth and the things that make you you, you know? And it's the whole you um what's the line again? It's like you never know what you miss until it's gone.
Yeah.
So I volunteer at the suicide hotline. Um I have over 100 hours at this point. And it's just interesting hearing all these different accounts of people who are on the verge of suicide or at least just thinking about it or whatever. You know, like anything relating to these thoughts or ideation. And it's just interesting because one of the common things that most people think of when it comes to suicidal ideation is, well, the world would be a better place when I'm gone. Or, like, nobody cares about me, so maybe it would just, like, nobody would even notice if I wasn't here. And it's like one of the sad things is, like, when we've been talking about this whole time, like you never really know what you miss until it's gone, but also like not really appreciating what we have. It's like the thing that makes suicide so sad is we're probably not treating that person that greatly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
In all honesty, they probably have a point in some regard, not about having suicidal ideation, but at the very least, like, not feeling cared about or appreciated enough. Like, maybe they just feel like they're being stomped on all the time, or they've felt wronged in a sense. And the reason why I bring this up is because if they go through with it and they are gone, I know, like I said, this is a very heavy turn from what we were just talking about, like pop culture references or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when they are gone, guess what everybody's thinking? Number one, regret. Why regret? Isn't that interesting? Why regret? Well, I should have talked to that person more. I should have told them I love them. I should have told them thank you. You know, it's all these thoughts. Regret because they're no longer here. You wouldn't have felt that way if you weren't doing that already when they were here, you know?
Yep.
That's kind of what you were saying. You never know what you missed until it's gone. In that case, it's like, you know, you weren't treating them well. It's not like you were treating them poorly necessarily, but that's why you have regret.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like, that's when everybody comes out and starts saying something, you know? That's when you get your family receives letters. Like, if there was a suicide in your family, it's like they receive letters from all sorts of people, family, friends of those of the person who did it, even letters from very far removed people, you know,
Yeah.
like somebody you only had a few distant encounters with them. But it goes to show how meaningful somebody's life really is, and how, and that's the scary part about suicide. It's like you forget all of that when you're entrenched, and yeah, everything like that. But
Yeah.
you know,
And that's it's one of those things that I'll never forget what this one person told me last year, and it was you never realize the impact you have on someone's life. You never truly realize that impact. And
absolutely.
when you when I go back and I think about all the people that, and I've been on multiple retreats and stuff like that, and like mindfulness retreats and things, and there's always a section where people write to you. And this isn't for any specific retreat, so for anyone listening, if you're trying to like get spoilers, I'm not going to specify the retreats I've been on. But
He's not going to tell you guys.
exactly, I'm really not. But what I will
Better
say,
unsubscribe, because you're not getting it.
what I will say is,
I'm making a subscriber joke after talking about suicide.
oh, rough.
Okay, go on.
But with how you handle, or okay, where was I? I was with the writing portion. So there's like a certain portion during these retreats where the retreat leaders, they reach out to people and they ask, like, would you like to write this person that anything special? They're going through a retreat right now, and they're going through a change or a development. What would you like to say to them? And you don't realize how much of an impact not only they had on your lives, but how much you have had on theirs until you read that letter. And for some people, it brings them to tears. Because it's either people that they haven't talked to in a long time, or a family member they're not on the best terms with, or something like that. And it brings a lot of people to tears. And with suicide, it's disastrous. That mentality is so difficult to get out of, and you're not realizing the impacts you've made. If you played on a baseball team, you don't realize the impact you make on those coaches, or maybe the younger players. You don't realize the impacts you've made on people in speech and debate, or even the young kids that you used to have buddies. Like, we used to have buddies in middle school, and even the impacts you make on those kids. Some of those kids still remember my name. Whenever I see them, they say hi, and they know me by my first name. And it's the impact you make. I remember my 8th grade buddies. It's incredible. And even by every person you interact with throughout the day, you just don't know. Especially if it's a really close friend. You may hug them for 7 or 8 minutes, and you don't realize the true impact that hug is giving them. You don't realize that the impact of just letting your friend speak, just letting your friend talk to you, and just you being a brick wall. You don't have to give a response. You're soaking it in. Just allowing that to happen. You don't realize the impact you're having on that person. And it's incredibly unique, because when you lose that, sometimes you realize the impact you've had, but most of the times you start to recognize the impact that person had on your life when they're gone. And that's what leads, when someone is about to commit suicide, that's what leads to a lot of people afterwards realizing the impact that person had on their lives, and the lack of impact, perhaps, that they had on that person's lives, or that person's life, as a reciprocating factor.
Right. And Sawyer, I was kind of thinking, while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, like, this video series in Culmination, I try to make it like based on a topic, and everything we talk about directs to the topic. And for the past like maybe 10 to 20 minutes, we've been talking about gratitude and stuff, and not necessarily delayed gratification. And I was trying to think of like, does this relate, or is this technically off the path? But I think it does relate. And I guess the reason why I'm saying that is, I guess you could think of it like the gratification component is the reward of knowing that you're cared for and that you've made a difference on people's lives. But as you know, it's not instant. Like, you don't necessarily know how much you mean to somebody at that very moment. And sometimes that can be difficult, you know? I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not difficult when you're just confused or you don't really know. But there's times, and I'm sure you've had these moments where it's like special moments. It's whether it's with friends at a park, or a sudden realization, or even just like a simple text message at a unique or mundane time of the day. It's just where it hits you, and it's delayed, but it tells you everything you need to know. And all of the hard work or all of the suffering of doubting yourself and everything doesn't hold a candle to the fact that you've impacted somebody's life, or you've just brought a smile to someone's face. You know, it doesn't matter what you did. You've impacted somebody in some way. And you might not necessarily get the benefit of that immediately, but I think that's another example of delayed gratification. Does that make sense?
I think if you remember the example of eating with friends and how that's like, you have that balance between you're not only instantly getting a reward, but you're also getting a delayed reward as well. That's what this is.
Yeah.
If you're positively impacting someone's life in the moment, not only do you know what you're doing, or at least have a general sense. If the person's smiling, say you tell a joke, I think the perfect joking in comedy is like one of the best things in the world. But
Yeah.
I think when you tell a joke and you can see that person genuinely laugh and smile, it should bring joy to yourself. But it also builds that long-term relationship. It's understanding in the moment. If you can understand exactly what you've done, and maybe your goal throughout the day is to just set the day aside to do good things for people. You know you're doing good things, and by accomplishing those good things for other people, you feel good instantly. But then you can see the results of your actions down the road, either with those built relationships, or say helping someone get off the street, or whatever it may be. You can see those results on the long term and be happy as well. And even if
Yeah.
that happiness doesn't come in the long term, and it's only a short term happiness, you're not feeling unhappy in the long term because of that action. Like there's no risk there other than instant gratification, which is not a risk at all. That's just a part of the reward. The only risk is that you're sacrificing your current present day time to help someone else, but your reward outnumbers that tenfold. So, or at least it should.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what you're saying is correct. But I think in many of those cases, it's also a double pronged reward. Right? You have that compromise of where you're getting both, but the best of both worlds.
Right. And I guess from there, we've been talking for quite a while. I guess we can start to kind of conclude here. I guess the last thing that I'll ask you, Sawyer, is here. I'll ask you two questions, but you can choose which one you'd rather answer. Number
Okay.
one, how would you sum up delayed gratification after what we've talked about? Or what did you get out of this conversation in a more general sense?
I think I'm thinking of a way to answer both at the same time. I'm going to try and get around your rules. I think for me, something I kind of recognized as I was talking is I was thinking of certain people as I was talking with you,
Mm-hmm.
and as I was thinking of certain people, I was thinking of all the topics that we talked about. So
Right.
thinking of abstinence, thinking of financial literacy, thinking of
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob especially. Thinking of all the different concepts that we've touched on, even just the graciousness or the gratitude towards other people for what they've done for us and to
Yes.
us. Just what came to mind were specific people and specific events, specific instances of someone either giving me a great quote to use in this talk, or someone actively doing something that ended up changing my life.
Yeah.
It made me think of that more than I usually do. And so I would say that was nice. And what's great about that is not only did this talk have a level of delayed gratification, which it did. The delayed gratification was going through the talk and kind of realizing and thinking about these people in the framework of delayed gratification.
That is quite meta, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's like reading a book. But
Hmm.
it's very much the great piece about it is it allows just talking things through. It allows for reflection, and it also allows for me to define what delayed gratification is, which by definition, it's basically the sacrifice of the present time for that for that gratification. I think of a timeline, and you're just receiving it at a later date through that
Right.
concept of time, and it doesn't exclude the possibility of also instant gratification, as we've discussed, but it leaves that realm open for the best of both worlds, or for just the simple happiness of life that comes with social interaction, or your own decisions that may lead to simplistic minimalism, or just being happy in the long run and in the short run, rather.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you summed it up quite well. So with that said, thank you so much, Sawyer, for joining me.
Yeah,
It's,
thanks for having me, dog.
yeah, of course. And to those listening to this who managed to get through it all, well, I thank you for listening, and hopefully this displayed a good example of delayed gratification with a nice happy ending. So with that said, thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.